Hey guys, before we start, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment if you have any feedback. Let's go to the story. There's a difference between love and control. It took me years to understand that, and even longer to accept that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally only love the version of you that fits their expectations. I learned that the hard way, and it all started with my sister's wedding. Bonnie had always been the favorite. She was the golden child, the one my parents adored, the one they built their world around. She was petite, blonde, effortlessly beautiful, everything I wasn't. And trust me, my family never let me forget that. Growing up, our house revolved around Bonnie's achievements. She was the girl who won dance competitions, the one who had a full wall of trophies in our parents' living room. Every holiday, every family gathering, my mother would go on and on about Bonnie's latest success. Bonnie got the lead in the recital. Bonnie was asked to model for a local boutique. Bonnie got invited to an exclusive summer program. And then there was me. The daughter got a polite nod at best. I was never the kind of girl who fit the mold my mother wanted. By the time I was 10, I already understood that my body was considered a problem. The comments started early. Are you sure you need seconds? Boys like girls who take care of themselves. You'd be so pretty if you lost a little weight. Even when they weren't directly criticizing me, they were comparing me to Bonnie. Bonnie has such a fast metabolism. Bonnie loves running. Maybe you should try it. It wasn't just about my size. It was about how they saw me. Like I was a rough draft that needed fixing. I was the smart one, which was a nice way of saying, well, at least you have your brain because you'll never be the pretty one. And the worst part? Bonnie knew it. She loved it. Because as long as I was beneath her, she would always be on top. By high school, I learned that the best way to survive was to stay quiet. I avoided mirrors. I stopped shopping with my mother because I couldn't stand the way she sighed when I picked up a size she didn't approve of. I started eating alone in my room because I didn't want to deal with Bonnie making little comments about carbs and calories. At some point, I just accepted that this was my place in the family. I wasn't the daughter they bragged about. I was just there. And I thought that once I moved away, it would get better. I thought that distance would change things. I was wrong. Bonnie got engaged last year. And suddenly, my body became my family's problem again. Because I wasn't just their disappointment anymore. I was a bridesmaid. In my mother's world, that meant one thing. I had to be photo-ready. I should have known something was coming when my mother invited me over for dinner. She had been unusually nice over the phone. She asked how I was, telling me how excited she was to see me. It had been months since I visited home, and I figured maybe, just maybe, this was a step toward a better relationship. I was so wrong. The moment I walked through the front door, my mother looked me up and down, not with the warmth of a mother seeing her daughter after months apart, but like she was assessing me, sizing me up like a problem that needed to be solved. And then she said it. We need to talk about your weight. There it was. No greeting. No, how have you been? Just that. I stood frozen in the entryway, my coat still half unbuttoned. Like an idiot. I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Not even a little. You're in the wedding party, she continued. And we need to make sure you look presentable in the photos. Presentable. Like I was some kind of problem they had to fix. Bonnie sat on the couch, pretending to be sympathetic. Mom just means that we want everyone to feel confident in the pictures, she said. I turned to my dad, hoping, stupidly, that he might shut this down. Instead, he sighed. It's just a few months. Why not try losing a little? It's for Bonnie's big day. And that was when I realized, this wasn't a request. This was an expectation. I wasn't being asked to lose weight. I was being told. Bonnie placed her hand over mine, smiling like she was doing me some great favor. This will be so good for you, she said. And I'll be your accountability partner. I'll check in with you every day to keep you on track. Every day. Like I was some kind of charity project. Like my sister was volunteering to make me a better person. I could feel my nails digging into my palm, but I forced a smile. At that moment, I made a decision. They thought they were about to control me. They thought I was going to change for them. But they had no idea. I was about to change everything. On my terms. I sat at that dinner table, chewing through bites of food that suddenly tasted like ash. My mother chatted like nothing was wrong, going on about the wedding venue, the guest list, and the perfect floral arrangements. And Bonnie? She kept throwing little glances at me, like she was waiting for me to say something. Waiting for me to agree to this ridiculous plan. To thank her for her kindness. To let her take control of me the same way she always had. But this time, I didn't react. I just listened, because I had already made up my mind. We're all trying to look our best for the wedding, Bonnie finally said. She tapped her perfectly manicured nails against her glass, fake sympathy dripping from every word. It's not just about you, you know. We all want to be the best versions of ourselves. I swallowed my food, forcing myself to stay calm. Oh, of course, I said smoothly. I think it's great that we're all so invested. Her eyes flickered with something satisfaction, because she thought I had fallen for it, that I was going to play along. But she didn't know the truth. She didn't know that this wasn't about her anymore. This was about me. I went home that night and sat in front of the mirror for a long time, not to criticize myself, not to pick apart my flaws, but to really look at myself, to acknowledge that, for the first time in my life, I had the power to choose what happened next. For years, my body had been a battleground, a constant war between who I was and who they wanted me to be. But if I was going to change, it wasn't going to be for them. It was going to be for me. The next morning, I signed up for a gym membership, not because I wanted to shrink, not because I wanted to be presentable in wedding photos, but because I wanted to see what my body was capable of. I had spent so much of my life hating it. Now, I want to learn how to respect it. I started lifting weights, running, building strength, not just physically, but mentally. I wasn't trying to be smaller. I was trying to be stronger. And every time I pushed through another set, every time I ran just a little farther, I could feel it. I was finally becoming someone they couldn't control. Meanwhile, Bonnie kept up her little game. Every day, she texted me reminders. Morning check-in. How's the weight loss going? Be strong. No sugar today. Think of the wedding photos. I'm so proud of you for finally taking this seriously. She thought she was guiding me, keeping me on track. She had no idea that I was already miles ahead of her. Because I wasn't just losing weight. I was rebuilding myself. And soon enough, she was going to realize that this was a game she could never win. The weight started coming off. Not because of Bonnie's constant texts. Not because of my mother's passive-aggressive comments. And not because I wanted to look presentable in wedding photos. I was doing this for me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't focused on shrinking. I was focused on building strength, endurance, confidence. And with every run, every rep, every weight lifted, I felt myself changing. Not just physically, but mentally. I was becoming someone new. And my family had no idea. Bonnie still thought she was in charge. Every few days, she sent her usual check-ins. Just reminding you to stay on track. Hope you're making healthy choices. Only a few more months. You're gonna look amazing. I never argued. I never corrected her. Because I wanted her to believe she was winning. That way, when the truth came out, it would hit even harder. 3 months before the wedding, Bonnie invited me to go shopping. We need to get your bridesmaid dress altered, she said, like it was a casual thing. Like she hadn't spent the last 6 months trying to mold me into something she approved of. I went along, knowing exactly how this was going to go. Because for the first time, I was the one in control. The second I stepped into the boutique, my mother's eyes widened. Bonnie blinked, her mouth slightly open as if she hadn't expected actual results. I had lost weight, yes, but that wasn't what had them staring. It was my posture, the way I carried myself. I didn't shrink into the background. I didn't avoid eye contact. I stood tall, and they didn't know how to handle it. Wow, Bonnie finally said, forcing a smile. You stuck with it. I nodded. Yeah, I did. The boutique employee took my measurements, then frowned. You'll need a smaller dress size, she said. Bonnie's smile tightened. Because this wasn't part of her plan. She wanted me to be smaller, but not too small. Not small enough to take attention away from her. And suddenly, I saw it. I saw everything. Bonnie had never wanted to help me. She had wanted me to struggle under her control. She had wanted me to fail. But I hadn't. And that realization? It ruined her. You must feel amazing, my mother said, trying to salvage the moment. I just shrugged. I do. But not because of the weight. Bonnie's expression hardened. Because she knew exactly what I meant. I wasn't thanking her. I wasn't thanking any of them. I had done this for me. And that? That was something they could never take credit for. Bonnie's wedding was still months away, but my mother acted like we were on a countdown clock. She called constantly, asking about my progress. How much have you lost? Are you sticking to the meal plan? You should try fasting. It really works. I stopped answering most of her calls, but that didn't stop Bonnie. She was relentless. She loved playing the role of my accountability partner. Like this was some kind of fun sisterly challenge instead of a calculated attempt to mold me into the version of myself that she could tolerate. I'm just so happy you're finally taking this seriously. She gushed over text one night. You're going to look amazing in the wedding photos. Wedding photos. That was all this was ever about. Not me. Not my health. Not my happiness. Just how I looked standing next to her. I started playing along. Not because I was doing this for them, but because I wanted them to believe they were winning. That I was obedient. That I was changing for them. But every time Bonnie sent me a check-in text, I just smiled to myself. Because I wasn't doing this for her. I wasn't following their rules. I was building my own. I trained harder than I ever had before. Not to be smaller, but to be stronger. I lifted heavier, ran faster, pushed myself past every limit I had ever thought existed. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to take up space. I wasn't trying to disappear. I was learning to own myself. Months passed. Bonnie kept pushing. She loved asking for updates. She wanted to monitor me. Because in her mind, this wasn't about me changing. This was about her winning. She thought she had me under control. She thought I was finally becoming the sister she wanted. But she had no idea what was coming. She had no idea that by the time I walked into that final dress fitting, I wouldn't just be different. I would be someone she couldn't control anymore. And that was going to destroy her. The final dress fitting was scheduled for a Saturday. Bonnie insisted that we go together. It'll be fun, she chirped. Just us girls, celebrating all our hard work. Our hard work. Like she had done anything besides sit on the sidelines and take credit. I didn't argue. I just smiled. Today was the day Bonnie was going to realize that she had lost. The moment I stepped into the boutique, I saw it. Bonnie's reaction. Her eyes flickered over me, head to toe, taking in the changes. Not just the weight I had lost, but the confidence, the posture, the way I walked without shrinking, without apologizing for taking up space. For the first time, Bonnie looked caught off guard, and I could tell she hated it. The boutique employee led me to the dressing room. My original dress was waiting, but it didn't fit anymore. I had lost too much weight for the original alterations to work. Looks like we'll need a smaller size, the tailor said. Bonnie's jaw tightened. I turned to her, waiting for the fake cheerfulness, the forced congratulations. But for the first time, she didn't know what to say. My mother walked in just as I was stepping out of the dressing room. Her reaction was just as satisfying. She pressed a hand to her chest, almost in shock. Oh my, she breathed. Look at you. I had spent years begging for their approval. For my mother to look at me like that. For Bonnie to respect me. But now, I didn't care. Because I hadn't done this for them. I had done this for me. And they knew it. You must be so proud of yourself, my mother gushed. All that hard work finally paid off. I just smiled. Yeah, it did. But not in the way they thought. I wasn't proud because I had lost weight. I was proud because I had finally let go of them. Bonnie forced a laugh. Well, at least now the wedding photos will look amazing. I tilted my head slightly, watching her carefully. She was scrambling to find control again. To remind me that this was her moment. That I was supposed to be grateful. But I wasn't. Oh, this wasn't about the wedding, I said simply. Bonnie's smile froze. For the first time in her life, she was speechless. Because she realized. She had lost. That night, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. For years, I had let them define me. Let them dictate my worth. But now, I finally see the truth. I had never been the problem. I had only ever been the scapegoat. And now that I was done playing their game, they had no idea what to do with me. Bonnie didn't speak to me much after that. Oh, she kept up the act in front of our parents, smiling and pretending everything was fine. But I could feel it. The shift. She had spent our entire lives holding the upper hand, the better sister, the prettier one, the favorite. And now? Now, she wasn't so sure. And that terrified her. The week of the wedding, the family was buzzing with last-minute preparations. My mother was frantic about floral arrangements. My father kept bragging about how much he was spending on the reception. And Bonnie? Bonnie was cracking. I could see it in the way she kept watching me. Like she was waiting for me to screw up. To give her an opening. To prove to herself that, no matter what, I would always be beneath her. But that wasn't going to happen. Not this time. The night before the wedding, we had the rehearsal dinner. A big event, full of Bonnie's friends, extended family, and her fiancé's wealthy relatives. The kind of night where everything had to be perfect. And Bonnie was desperate to make sure she was the main attraction. But there was a problem. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. People noticed me. They complimented me. Not just on my weight loss, but on my confidence. My energy. The way I carried myself. And Bonnie? She was seething. At one point, an aunt I barely knew pulled me aside, smiling warmly. "You seem so different," she said. "So much happier." "I am," I told her. And for the first time, I truly meant it. Bonnie didn't like that. I could see her watching the interaction, her fingers tightening around her champagne glass. Then, suddenly as she made her move, "You know," she said, loud enough for half the room to hear, "I just love that my sister finally found motivation. It's amazing what a little push can do." Silence. The way she said it, like she was responsible, like she expected me to thank her, to give her credit, to let her have one last moment of control. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. I turned to her, smiling sweetly. "Oh, Bonnie," I said, my voice smooth. "You still don't get it, do you?" Her eyes narrowed. "Get what?" I leaned in slightly, just enough for only her to hear. "You didn't push me. You never had that kind of power over me. You never will." Her entire face tensed. Because she knew it was over. She couldn't touch me anymore. And she never would again. The wedding day arrived, and I had never felt lighter. Not because of the weight I had lost, but because, for the first time in my life, I didn't care what my family thought of me. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I wasn't seeking approval. I was just free. And that was something Bonnie could never take away from me. The ceremony was beautiful, I'll give her that. A picture-perfect event, just like my mother had always dreamed of. Bonnie floated down the aisle in her designer gown, glowing with manufactured perfection. And yet, I could see it. The way she kept sneaking glances at me. Because no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't ignore it. I wasn't the insecure, overshadowed sister anymore. I was standing in my light. And that ruined everything for her. At the reception, people kept approaching me. Not just family, but guests I had never even met. "You look incredible. What's your secret? You seem so different, so confident." Every compliment chipped away at Bonnie's carefully crafted world. Because this was supposed to be her moment. And yet, people were noticing me. Not for my weight. Not for my transformation. But because I finally carried myself like I mattered. Because I did. At one point, my mother pulled me aside. Her smile was tight, her voice just a little too forced. "You seem different," she said. I met her gaze, calm and steady. "I am." She hesitated. "Well, you should be proud of yourself. You shaped up for the wedding." Ah, there it was. The attempt to take credit. To remind me that, in her mind, this had all been their doing. I just smiled. "Oh, Mom, you still don't get it, do you?" Her eyes flickered, just like Bonnie's had the night before. Because she knew. For the first time in my life, I wasn't playing along anymore. Bonnie barely spoke to me that night. Oh, she put on a show for the guests, smiling, laughing, soaking up the attention. But in the moments when no one was looking, I saw the way her expression faltered. Because she knew. She had spent her entire life trying to keep me beneath her. And now, I was standing right beside her. Or maybe, above her. At the end of the night, I walked outside, taking in the cool air. For the first time, I didn't feel the weight of my family's expectations pressing down on me. I wasn't the forgotten daughter, the problem, the before picture in Bonnie's perfect little story. I was just me. And that was enough. That had always been enough. They just never saw it. But now, it didn't matter if they did. Because I did. And that was all I needed. The wedding was over. But the change in me? That was permanent. I wasn't the same person who had walked into that house months ago, hoping for my family's approval. I had finally stopped seeking it. And once they realized that, they didn't know what to do with me. Bonnie tried to act like nothing had changed. She still sent texts fewer than before, but still there. "We should get brunch soon. Hope you're keeping up with your routine. Let's catch up." But now, I see through it. She wasn't reaching out because she cared. She was reaching out because she needed to know. Needed to see if she still influenced me. She didn't. So I stopped responding. Eventually, she stopped trying. My mother was more persistent. "You haven't been home in a while," she said over the phone one day. "We miss you." I almost laughed. They had spent years treating me like a problem. Now that I had solved it without them, they wanted me back? No, that wasn't how this worked. "I've been busy," I told her. Which was true. I was living my life. On my terms. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. There was a long pause on the other end. Then, finally, my mother sighed. "Your father and I were just talking about how different you are now." I waited. I already knew where this was going. It's like, "You've changed so much, you're not even the same person." Ah, there it was. Not pride. Not admiration. Just discomfort. because I had grown beyond them. And that was something they couldn't handle. I just hope you don't forget where you came from, she added. I smiled. Not bitterly, not angrily, just calmly. I didn't forget, I told her. I just finally realized I don't need to go back. That was the last real conversation we had. Oh, they still called. Still sent the occasional message. But the warmth that had once been faked so well was gone. Because they had finally understood something. I wasn't their project anymore. I wasn't their shame. I wasn't there before picture waiting for their approval. I was just me. And for them, that was never enough. But for me, it was. It always had been. I just had to learn it for myself.